And today's broadcast is brought to you by Eclectic Horseman Magazine. Stay tuned for Eclectic Conversations hosted by Emily Gitchie.
Thanks for joining me today. I'm here with Ellen Black, who is an equine instructor at North Central Texas College, which is a mouthful.
Yes.
Thank you for joining us today. Tell me a little bit about your school. It's not a school that I've heard of before, so tell me what makes it special.
Yeah, so we're in Gainesville, Texas, about an hour north of Fort Worth. And we're a small community, small town of Gainesville, but the college has a long history in equine stuff. So we have a stock horse team, an IHSA team, a judging team, and then we have an equine certificate and associate's degree program as well. And things that make us unique is that our equine center is walking distance from main campus. So we have students that you can just walk straight to the equine center and go to the cafeteria for lunch. And we also have a set of dorms on our equine center so that students that are on the teams live right where their horses are kept. And we have school horses, which is really unique in the sense that we have riding classes for intro level riders. So I get a lot of students that they're an equine major, but they've never ridden a horse. And so we have a class for you where you can come learn how to ride and do the groundwork stuff. So that's really exciting. And then our location as well, we're right around, obviously Fort Worth area. There's lots of trainers in the area. So our students have a really cool opportunity to go work at a bunch of different places and with other equine professionals. And I think makes us unique to other even bigger schools that are in different, maybe not as horse central areas.
Awesome. Well, tell me a little bit about like you answered, you sort of touched on some of my questions already, but like tell me a little bit about, I'm sure that the students run the gamut of, like you said, some have experience and some don't. Tell me a little bit about like some different kinds of students, what kind of programs what they're getting at the school, and then where they're going to go afterwards.
Yeah, so I generally have two categories. Very experienced, my parents are horse trainers. I'm a dang good trainer myself. Or I love horses, and this is my first time getting to be around them. And so for the kids that are they're trainer minded, like they either want to go work for a trainer or they want to be very hands-on in the industry. What they get out of it is kind of the science knowledge. They learn about nutrition. They learn about, in our vet tech class, they learn about medication and stuff like that. Or we have like a business class where they can learn about how to make their own business and things like that. So they're getting more of the book school knowledge. And then if in our degree plan, sometimes they have to take, if they're not on a team, they have to take a riding class. And so for those kids, I have kids that are like, Miss Black, like I'm way too advanced for horsemanship 1. And I'm like, well, don't worry, I'm going to put you on the craziest school horse we have. and then I'll pair them with beginner students and say, what you're learning is how to teach. And that's something that can profit the advanced student way after they leave school here. Being able to teach somebody is a really useful skill. So that's what they get out of it. And then for my beginner group of students, they get the hands-on stuff. Generally, my kids that aren't as experienced in the horse world, like they do really well in the school part of things. They're, good test takers. They get the information really well, but the hands-on stuff is brand new. And as a horse person, like you just have to do it. You have to get out there and put your hands on a horse. And so that's what they get, is that experience in handling. And obviously our degree is not our associate's degree is 2 years. It's not a really long time. And so my goal as a teacher is to give them as many safety practices. Like if I go send you to work for a trainer, I want to have some confidence that you're at least not going to hurt yourself or put somebody else in danger. So that's what they get out of it.
That must be really rewarding though, to match those two ends of the spectrum and have them, sort of come a little more to balance.
Yes. Last night I was teaching, we have a reining class. And I was sitting there watching with some of my students, and I was getting emotional because I remember watching them a year ago. They were learning how to post the trot. And last night they were like schooling spins. And I was like, man, like this is just the coolest job. because getting to see these girls grow and their skill set and their ability to communicate with each other and say like, hey, I think your horse is kind of heavy on his shoulder. I'm like, yeah, like that's something they never would have seen a year ago. It's really rewarding.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about your path. How did you become an instructor, an equine instructor?
Yeah, so my parents are professional musicians, so I did not grow up in a horsey family. But I started working at a lesson barn when I was a teenager, just volunteering, and then I got the opportunity to start assistant teaching there for the lady I was working with, and then I got to teach full time, and I was going to a community college. I didn't really want to go to school. I loved horses, and then eventually I found an animal science degree at A&M. So I went to A&M, and then my mind just exploded. I didn't know you could study horses in college, and I didn't know about judging or showing horses. So I just remember being like, oh my, like I found my people. I found my horse crazy people, you know? It was amazing. So I did that. And then I actually ended up working at a law firm after I got my bachelor's degree because I didn't want to be a horse trainer. Um, and I didn't really do a good job of exploring other options. And so I just thought, well, let me try the 9 to 5, see how I like it. I hated it. And then I realized every job I was looking at were jobs at colleges or universities, and they all required a master's degree. And so as much as I had been like, I'm never going to go back to school, I was like, I need to, like, I need to for the kind of job that I want. So I went back to A&M, got my master's in animal science. And there I got the chance to assistant teach some classes. And I just realized like, I've been teaching since I was 16. And I was kind of like pushing that away, like, oh, I don't want to be a teacher. And then I was like, this is what I love.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I finished my master's and I applied for the job here at NCTC and got it. And it's just been the biggest blessing. I was telling my kids all the time, like, I can't believe this is my job. Like, this is so fun. It's amazing.
Yeah. What's it like to be around young people all day?
It's really fun. It's humbling. They remind me, I'll try to say something that I think is relevant, and they're like, that died, 5 years ago, Miss Black. So it's really it keeps me, I don't want to say it keeps me young because I'm not super old, but it keeps me, I guess young. They're full of life, and it's an exciting time in their lives because most of them, it's their first time out of the bubble of their parents or their family. They're stepping into something new and trying to figure out who they are as individuals. And so it's amazing what horses can do in helping people step out of their comfort zone and their shell. And my favorite is just taking shy kids and putting them with the horse, and then 2 weeks later suddenly that kid is really talkative, and it's because they're confident now. They have some hands-on skill with the horse, and that translate to confidence in themselves. And so working with them is just great. They tell me about their lives, and I'm like, my gosh, like I just remember being that age, and everything just seems so like exciting and new. And that's how they get excited, just to come to class. And that's just so great. It's exciting for me.
Yeah. Yeah. That sounds fun. I have a daughter that like we're just starting to look at colleges, and so it's like it's a super exciting time.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about tell me a little bit about the school horses and sort of the nuts and bolts of the things that you're doing in your classes.
Yeah. So right now we have 17 school horses, and they're all donated. We have everything from, your kind of quintessential trail horse. They can walk, trot, lope, they'll keep someone safe, but they're not fancy, all the way to like world champion show horses that just finished their show career and either owner didn't want them or couldn't keep them sound or whatever it is. And so that is like, obviously I went to A&M and I've traveled different colleges, and being here, I'm so blessed by the herd that we have. We really have an amazing group of horses. It's such a blessing. And so we have reiners and ranch riders. We've got some all-around horses. And so as things are changing, we're always looking for horses to come into our program, but safety is the biggest thing for us. But also we don't mind having a horse that's a little quirky because the student's going to encounter that in real life. And so that's something that I teach in my classes. I'm giving you the safest animal I can, but don't be fooled. Not all horses are going to stand here while you know, throw your sonic drink around, you know. So in class, in our horsemanship, I have horsemanship 1, and then the following semester is horsemanship 2. And so we do a blend of groundwork and riding. And then this year I've added in some things like we have to learn how to wrap a horse's legs. How do you clean stalls the right way? What are the different types of bits and bridles? And when I first started, it was just handling, just riding. And then as I kind of went on, I realized I would have some students that would go work for a trainer, and then they would come back to me and say, I didn't know how to do XYZ. I'm like, ooh, like I could teach that to them in class and send them out a little bit more prepared. So we kind of changed a little bit of that, trying to put in some more. Again, that's what I tell them. If the trainer says go do XYZ, I want you to at least have seen that process before. And so you're not completely lost when they say go wrap that horse's legs. You at least grab a polo wrap and, not a standing wrap or something. And so we do that. So they learn, everything from just moving a horse around on the ground. We do desensitizing stuff, which that can be kind of a challenge because our horses are very broke. And so sometimes I'll grab one of our all around horses that, might actually do something. But like in a real life situation, here's what we would do. And then they learn everything from just body position and control to leads. This year I've got a pretty advanced horsemanship 1 group, and so we're working on like lead changes and stuff like that. That's something I wouldn't normally do in horsemanship 1, but just kind of depends on the group of kids that I have. And then we have an advanced reining class, and so they're learning all those maneuvers and things like that and how to school a horse in the reining. And then we have a class in the spring called Fundamentals of Riding Instruction, where they learn how to teach. So that one's really cool too. And so they, have to make their own lesson plans and teach each other in a group setting. And that's a really fun one too. We used to have our dressage class, but we ended up swapping it out for reining because I had kids that wanted to ride. They didn't really care about dressage. So we've just changed that to reining. And that seems to be a little bit more exciting for this demographic of students. So
cool. And then you mentioned that you have a show team. So tell me a little bit about how that works.
Yeah, so we've got our stock horse, I guess it's called ranch horse team now, our ranch horse team, and then our IHSA team. So the ranch horse team, they do, the ranch pleasure and trail, reining and cow. And those students own their own horses. If they don't, we don't have school horses for them. We've had if there's your horse goes lame, we have a school horse you could take to a show, but those kids bring their own horses, and our coach, Hannah Gilmore, she coaches all the teams. And so I think right now she's got about 9 or 10 kids on her ranch horse team. And so those kids on the ranch horse team typically are on scholarship, anything from, $1,000 to some of them are on full ride scholarships. And we cover their board. They get shavings and coastal hay as part of their scholarship just for being on the team. So they compete pretty often. They've got the Stock Horse World Show coming up next weekend, and they stay busy. And then part of their scholarship is they have to put in barn hours, is what we call. So they have to volunteer 8 hours a week at the barn, helping keep things clean or feeding horses and stuff like that. Just because, of course, it takes a lot to maintain a facility.
Right.
So,
but that sounds like an incredible opportunity. If you're somebody who likes to show and is horse crazy, to be able to match that with going to school, that's incredible.
Yeah, exactly. And this last year we opened it up where they can bring, if they want to bring a second horse or a third horse and we have stall space, they can bring more horses. And so that's been cool for the kids that do kind of want to train and show a lot. They can bring some of their own, their horses here and keep working them. So they stay busy. They practice 3 to 4 times a week, and we have cows here that we lease so they can work cows at the equine center, which is nice. Or they'll travel to different trainers and work with them as well. They just went to Casey Deary's place a couple weeks ago to go work with the Dearys, which was pretty neat. And then the IHSA team is that type of team is they at a competition. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it.
It's like they have horses in a draw and then they
Yeah,
ride the horses. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I
yeah,
have heard about that.
wild. I was like, I would be terrible at that.
Yeah.
Um, so those kids, they just ride school horses. Some of them are on scholarship, but for a lot of those kids, because the IHSA has a walk trot division, so it can be a really good stepping stone for our really beginner kids.
Mhm.
And so for them, it kind of depends if they're on a scholarship or not. And some of them will use it like they want to get into showing. They're not ready to be on the ranch horse team.
Mhm.
So like, let's put you in IHSA and kind of see if you like it and if you're disciplined enough to get to the ranch horse team level.
And
So,
is it an English and Western classes or is it just English?
actually, right now we just have a Western team.
Okay.
So
Okay.
they do horsemanship, ranch riding, and reining,
Okay.
depending upon their skill and division level. And they use our school horses, and we'll take school horses to shows and stuff like that. They just got back from a show in Oklahoma this weekend. And those kids have to put in 4 hours of barn work. So it's less commitment, less, they don't have to take care of their own horses and things like that. So it's a little bit less involved. And so what's nice is if I have students like in horsemanship 1 this semester, I've got probably 5 kids that really, they're too advanced for the class. Like there's still stuff they can learn, but I'm encouraging them to go ahead and try out for the IHSA team. And they can use that practice as the credit for a horsemanship class instead. And so that's me and Coach Gilmore kind of work together to figure out like, hey, would you take these kids? And then that opens up spots for me to have more beginners in my class, and she can take the kids that are ready to show.
Yeah. That's cool. And you mentioned that like you have a more advanced group in your horsemanship 1 class. And so your curriculum must be pretty like fluid in that you can adapt to what you have in front of you.
Yes.
Whenever you so tell me a little bit about how that, like, you just see what's in front of you and you just like go with where you tell me a little bit about that process.
Yeah, that this year in particular was a challenge. And I told them straight up, I was like, y'all are the most advanced group I've ever had in this class. So I'm going to have to do some tweaking because this is, they already knew leads and posting on the correct diagonal. And I was like, that's what we were going to do for the first 2 months. So, when I have those things pop up, normally what I'll do is put students on horses that I know struggle with those things, or a horse that will give them a horsemanship challenge in a way that, a different horse wouldn't. But in terms of like what our course objectives are, they're pretty broad in those classes. It's like body position, demonstrate safe handling practices. It's very broad. And so I have like a little checklist of about 20, 25 things that when a student leaves horsemanship 1, they should be able to do. And so in horsemanship 1, it's, posting trot, it's pretty basic. And so for these kids, I'll kind of bump it up. So maybe we're going to work on diagonals, but we're going to work on them while we're going over trot logs or something to kind of raise the difficulty level. And sometimes I'll tell them, like, I'm throwing you to the wolves today and just kind of see what you do, and we'll go from there. Or some days I call them horse trainer days, where they warm up and then I pull them in and say, what is your horse struggling with today? And they'll say XYZ, and then we'll come up with a game plan, and I'll just kind of let them go work and just watch them and kind of try to use it that way. If the student has this riding skills, try to instead develop that trainer mindset of what does my horse need today? Because I had this week a horse that just wanted to lope, and I was like, student, you are excused from what we're doing, and your horse needs to go be trotted for 30 minutes. Talk to me when you're done. So that's what I try to navigate, and this semester really has been a challenge with that. It's made me have to be more creative because this is a very advanced group.
Cool. That sounds like a lot of fun. Let's see, I have a couple questions. So do you ever, probably not in Texas, I would imagine most people like understand like horses and the value of horses, but like, do you ever like come across people that are like, oh, people still ride horses? Like, I mean, how would you, if you're riding in an elevator with somebody who has no like horse experience, like how would you explain to them the value of learning with horses?
That's a great question. I definitely run into people like that all the time. I was working with someone in our college the other day. She was working for like our IT department kind of, and she came to the barn and she had like never touched a horse before. So it was really cool. Um, and so it's good to explain to them like that the horse industry really impacts our economy, and we don't really think of it that way, but if any, people are more familiar with like the rodeos and racing. Um, and so you can talk to those people about that and like the money that goes into just like maintaining those facilities and the jobs it creates and things like that. Um, and talking about, obviously there's therapeutic benefits, there's health benefits to being around horses and things like that. But I think the rise of shows like Yellowstone has really kind of opened people's eyes. We were talking about that in our board meeting last year, the Yellowstone effect. And, being a cowboy is cool now. And so it's cool to talk to people about that. And that's something when I go do recruiting things is to tell them like, hey, you can come take a class and learn how to ride a horse. And you don't have to be a horse person. You don't have to major in horses to come take this class. And kind of trying to open people's eyes to, I think we have this all or nothing mindset of like, you're either a cowboy or you're not, and it's like, well, no, most horse people I know that have horses, they don't work in the horse industry.
Mm-hmm.
And so trying to keep an open mind, and I think that can sometimes be hard for people in the ag industry. Sometimes we can be like, well, you're not a horse person or you didn't grow up doing it. And as me, I didn't grow up doing it.
Yeah.
And so it's trying to be accepting and welcoming. And if you're a beginner, you don't know what you're doing, that's okay. Like we still want you to come hang out, and maybe you're scared to ride a horse, but you can come learn how to groom and be around a horse and just enjoy horses. That's what makes people fall in love with horses, is being by one, And so anytime I can bring somebody to the barn, it's really exciting to see people get to like meet a horse. It's crazy. I'm always blown away by it. I'm like, horses do something to people. It's different.
It is. Well, and it's like we have some little kids in the neighborhood and they saw my daughter and I out riding and they're like, could we come pet the horses?
Yes.
And I'm like, yes,
yes,
like
exactly.
come brush the horses and hang out, because when you see that sparkle, it's like the most exciting thing.
It is. It's crazy. We did like an 8th grader career day. They had like local 8th graders come through all different majors in the college. Like they did like welding and stuff. But some came to equine, and we had a time where in their little rotations they could come pet a horse. And every time we do it, I'm like, they could either pet a horse or learn how to throw a rope. And those kids could not have cared less about throwing a rope. They were like, let me touch this horse. And every year I'm just like, wow, like that's just so cool,
Yeah. So what are I know like there's like sort of a concern, like in my industry, I'll just say like there's a concern about people aging out of horse ownership, and like the demographic is definitely changing. You're working around young people all the time. Like,
Yeah.
How do you feel about the horse world that they're going out into?
Yeah, it is interesting. And so I think I've been surprised in the last couple years. I've had students buy horses that I didn't expect. Like this particular student, like a more beginner student, to tell me, oh, I just bought a horse. So I was like, oh my gosh. And so I think there's the desire there. Obviously, things are so expensive that finances are such a limiting factor. And then maybe you can afford a horse, but then where do you keep the horse? Do you live close enough to make this realistic? And so we're kind of, Gainesville's in more of a rural area. And so our students kind of fit that demographic more of, they're in places generally where it's easier for them to keep horses. They're closer to those areas. So I think there's the potential for that. And I've been surprised at my students that have bought horses. But it is a concern. And especially because, horses are a hobby now. Most people aren't making money off of horses. They're putting money into horses. Even if you think you're making money off of horses, you're putting a lot of money into horses too. So that's definitely a concern. And so I've had students recently be more interested in like leasing a horse,
Mhm.
and, to kind of negate some of the costs a little bit, which is still good. And that puts, if you own a lesson barn or a boarding place, or you have a horse that you can lease, like that puts you in a good position.
Mhm.
But it's a challenge, and things are becoming more, um, urban. They're putting up neighborhoods all around. And so it's, you know, the space to keep a horse is
Mhm.
shrinking too.
Well, and I think like you mentioned like I had the same pathway of like we moved next to a boarding facility and I cleaned stalls so that I could ride a horse, at
Yes.
least a horse. And like I just don't know, I don't know if that still happens as much today as it did when I was a kid.
Right.
With people worried about being sued or whatever. Like if a working student thing is still like, do you still encounter students who've had that working student experience?
Yeah, I do. So the students I have that own horses, if they're not keeping them at like their family's place or something, most of them are doing some sort of barn chores or work in exchange for board. Um, so
Well, that's
most,
exciting. That's good.
yeah.
I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. They are still, and that's something if they're like, I can't afford it, I'm like, you might go talk to your barn owner and just see, because it's
Yeah.
hard to find help.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
I'm like, see if they'll take a trade or, come down. And that's worked out for a lot of them.
Awesome. Well, what would you say are some of the most like surprising maybe transformations you've seen in students through their work in horsemanship?
You're gonna make me cry. Um, Man, it's mostly the confidence. I'm just always shocked. And so, um, and there's the biggest transformations I've seen is students that are very shy or they're not very confident, and giving them a chance to, they start on the easiest horse I have. And then as time goes on, I'll, give them a harder horse. And then eventually, they're on one of the hardest horses we have. And again, I had that moment last night watching my students, and they were on 4 horses. And I was like, guys, like a year ago, I never would have put you guys on these horses. Like, and it's exciting. I've got one girl, like she'd kind of ridden a little bit last year, and she's like worked really hard in class to get better. And now she's interning at a barn, and she's interning, they're letting her do some management stuff, and she's getting to ride and troubleshoot on some of their problem horses. And it's a kid that when she started, um, she was kind of like, I don't really know. She's like likes horses, but didn't really know where her place was.
Hmm.
And now she's like found her place. And I had even another student that didn't really want to be a horse trainer, and then she took the vet tech class and was like, I love this. And I was like, great, like let's do your internship with a vet. And she did her internship with the vet, and now she's working for the vet full time as a vet tech. And so that for me is the most rewarding part, is helping students kind of figure out where they fit.
Hmm.
And I have some students that, they think I want to be a horse trainer. And then I'm like, well, let me put you with the horse trainer. And then they figure out like, I don't really like that. And I'm like, that's fine. You can also work a 9 to 5 job. You can go work for APHA and, work in an office and still, be around horses and horse people, but, it's something that maybe fits your lifestyle better. So those are some of the biggest transformations I've seen, is students that are kind of lost. They like horses. They don't know where they fit. And then we find them the place where they are excited, about their place in the equine industry.
Yeah, that's awesome. That sounds so cool.
It is.
Um, is there anything that I didn't ask you that we should visit about your school, about your teaching, about your students? Something
Um,
that you thought I might ask you that I haven't yet?
um, that's a great question. I don't think so. I think the things that make our program unique really is those intro level riding courses. Like a lot
Mhm.
of schools don't offer those. Some do, but a lot don't. And I think, my expectation coming into NCTC was that I thought I was in a horse area. I was gonna be around like really super horse students that
Mhm.
like knew a lot about the horse industry. And I was been surprised in that more it's students that are kind of like, finally I get a chance, to go do this thing I love. And that would just be something I would say I think people don't realize. And I would be intimidated coming into an equine program, like I don't know anything about horses. And I would just say, I think that's unique about us is like, that's kind of our people in a lot of ways. Like is those people that haven't really done this before. And we try to make this just as, this is the time to figure out if you like it or not, And
awesome. Well, I
we're
mean,
the
that's so cool. That's so cool, and that's definitely worth getting the word out that is a place where folks can go get help and information and see if they like it.
Yeah, so I just appreciate you reaching out and getting to know about NCTC. It's a great place.
Thank you very much for taking the time to visit with me today, and I look forward to checking with you sometime in the future.
Perfect. It sounds great.